Yeah.
Hey, and welcome back. I'm here with Samantha Moeller, paramedic and firewife, and we're going to talk about how being a first responder in a first responder relationship is difficult but can be done, and how raising children inside of that looks. And we're just going to get into it. Welcome to the show.
My name's Sam Moeller. I have been a paramedic for over 20 years. I've worked in some very busy systems. I work for a private provider, so I've done that my entire adult life. This is all I've ever known. I am married to a firefighter paramedic for a municipal fire district that is in a neighboring county, and we actually met on the job. We have two kids. We have a 24, almost 25-year-old, and then we have a 7-year-old. I had my oldest son when I was a teenager and then became a paramedic and met my husband when he was 8. And then our 7-year-old, who just turned 7, is a great little boy. He also has been diagnosed with ADHD and ASD. So that's just kind of what we're navigating.
Tell me about all of that. Like, my mind is like going 90 miles an hour trying to even think about the schedule alone. How do you manage both schedules with a 7-year-old?
So when I first got into this and I had my older son, I was a single mom. I did it by myself. I didn't have family that lived in the town that I grew up in and I was living in at the time. So I basically worked to pay to have someone watch my child so I could do my job. And this was never a job that I like, oh, this is what I'm going to do. I literally fell into it. I started working in the hospital and I was like, oh, that looks kind of neat. And every day is different. And I found my passion and it found something that I'm good at. So I had my son and, a single mom, paying babysitters, all that stuff. And then when I met my husband, we had talked about if we were going to have children someday. And for a long time, we didn't think that we were going to have any more children because we were raising, our oldest. And then my husband at one point decided, I think I want to have kids. And I'm like, well, why? Because you told me this when I was, a spring chicken and not in my late 30s. But we ended up having a child. So when that happened, our entire dynamic shifted. I had been full time for my whole career. And now suddenly, because we live in a town and we don't have a lot of family that's close that can help us, I had to drop down to part time and work around his schedule. And there was a talk about, I don't have to work because I could stay home. And that is just not in my DNA. I like being an individual and having had that background as being a teenage mom and having to be independent. I'm a strong woman and I don't want to do that. I want to do things that are for myself and that I enjoy and that I love. So we decided to go part time. And then our son was born in 2018. So I took 6 months off, had him, and then I'm only scheduling my days on his 4-day because they work 4896s. And then COVID hit, and then COVID changed everything. On my end of it, working for a private provider on the ambulance, we slowed down for a little bit and then we got real, real busy. So there was a lull. So I wasn't required to be really at work as much. They're like, hey, we don't have any hours for this month. We're going to waive your part time requirements. But on his end of it, he started to get slammed. There was a lot of Mandos that were happening. We live in the Santa Cruz Mountains, so we had CZU fire that also happened. We had to evacuate from our home. There was just a lot of different things that had happened during that time. When CZU happened, I had been back at work, and the day that it actually blew up and blew in through our town and into our valley, I was actually on duty and I was supposed to work the next day. And I was watching from a, Cal Fire station, the cloud of smoke, listening to radio truck saying, oh, that's not good. What's happening? And my phone starts blowing up and it's my husband. And he's saying, when you come home tonight, I have to go into work. I'm being called in. And it's one of those things. He is a public sworn, provider. He doesn't have that choice. And when they say come in, he has to come in, especially when there's a natural disaster happening. And I remember having to call my supervisor from, this fire station where I'm watching this fire blow up and they're trying to manage evacuations and all these things. And I said, when I get off tonight, when my relief comes up, I'm not going to be able to come in tomorrow. I have to stay home with my child. I have never cried on the phone. I'm not a big crier unless I get mad, but he just made me feel real terrible about, well, what about you and you serving your community? And I'm just like, this is not the guilt trip that I need. Like, I promise I would like to help if I could, but I can't. I have to take care of my family. So that was my first real negative experience with having his job take priority over my job and having to be that default parent that sacrifices so that he can do his job. And being an independent woman, that's sometimes a really hard pill to swallow of being the one to be like, oh, well, I have to sacrifice for him to do what he loves and what he wants to do. So that was, kind of a rough year and the first start into that. And then over the last couple summers, we know that California loves to burn. And the department that my husband works for, they do a lot of wildland. They've got a lot of wildland interface, but they send out strike teams every summer. And last summer was probably the hardest summer we have ever had, where he deployed on 3 separate strike teams. He maxed out on 2 of those. And it was that type of call where I work my schedule around his schedule, and I actually build in days for Mando days because that's just part of what we do. Force backs are part of it. I get that. But they shouldn't be every 4-day, right? So like I work my schedule to where I will pick up shifts the last 2 days generally of his 4-day, because if he's at work, he's going to be captive audience to where they can just keep him and have him stay there. So I don't want to have a shift scheduled and then have to call off on that, because I'm also in a critical business to where I need to be staffing that ambulance. So last summer, he was gone the entire month of July. He came home for 4 days and then he went back out. And that was hard because I had a new management that was at my work. And my old manager, not my supervisor, but my manager, had been pretty understanding that, we're in a unique business. A lot of us are involved with other first responders or whatnot. So life happens and we get that. And so if I had to call out for something that was related to I have to stay home because he's getting sent out somewhere. It was like, cool, we understand, like I'm one of those people that if I'm going to have to call out, I'll make up for it. I'll pick up slack when there's other openings or there's night shifts. I will do the work. I just have to have this ability to be flexible. And with our new management last summer, I was calling and they were basically saying, figure it out. I can get in trouble. And I'm only allowed so much time to where I start to get discipline. And having been for my employer for 20 plus years, I've never had discipline. I don't have anything in my file. So now all of a sudden I'm looking at facing disciplinary action because I'm having to stay home to take care of my family while my husband works. I'm at the sake of state OES. I have no say in what's happening. I wish I could be at work, but I can't. And so that was really difficult last summer because he would call and it would just catch me off. And it's summertime. So he was 5 at the time. He wasn't in school. And it's just like, well, what are we going to do? And with his autism and his ADHD, he's a very active little boy. Man, I love him, but he is nonstop from 6:30 a.m. until 7:30 at night when he goes to sleep. It is just a Tasmanian devil that just runs around, and it's exhausting, and there's no break for me. And I'm carrying this mental load of taking care of our child, worrying about my husband, feeling lonely and isolated because nobody that I am friends with has the life that I have. And then dealing with possible being in trouble at work. Like, I don't want to jeopardize my ability to do a job that I absolutely love. And I know that I'm good at it. And it just didn't feel very fair. So when he got back and he knew, oh my gosh, the woman at our florist place in, where we live, he would, every time he would get deployed out, he would call and I'd have flowers delivered. And it was funny because it got to a point where he would call her and she said, oh, where'd you get sent now? Because it just was so consistent through last
Okay.
summer.
But let's pause for a second because how wonderful is it that he sends you flowers? He'll wait until day 10
Yeah.
of the role
Yeah.
to send me the flowers.
Yeah.
But it's really funny because now the kids are old enough where he'll purchase them at Safeway
Yeah.
and he'll tell the kids to tell me to go pick up my groceries. So I know I'm going to pick up my flowers. And the people come up to the car and they're like, this is all you ordered? Like, why couldn't you come into the store for this? It's so funny.
Yeah.
And the kids are like, oh man, this is so embarrassing, but they do it because they know it's important, right? So he's gotten the kids involved in this nonsense,
Yeah.
but it's so nice to be thought of, right?
If they could be home, they would be home. I know that. And I know that my husband acknowledges how hard it is for me because being a first responder, I also have those demons in my closet with my PTSD and issues that I deal with on top of just being a mom and a fire wife and all of that stuff. So he knows how taxing it is, and to just kind of just be acknowledged of, hey, I'm thinking of you. I know that it's hard. This is what I can do. It feels good because, I know he wishes he could be home. So,
I think a lot of our frustration in our marriage was that we were totally misunderstanding each other for a long time. I think in a lot of first responder relationships, even without somebody working on the other side, there's this idea that the person that's out in the field doing work, that job is more important than the one being done at home, or in your case, on the ambulance. And that's just not the case. And so if we're acknowledging the hard for each other, it's going to be so much easier,
yeah,
right? Just that I see you, I hear you, I know it's hard. I'm sorry. Here's some flowers is like everything.
yeah,
Everything.
yeah,
And it seems really silly at the time. Like I was just saying, it was really silly. I had to go pick up my flowers at Safeway. But then later on, you're like, wait, that actually got me through the next 12 days that he was on that strike team.
yeah, and I can look at those flowers and know that he's thinking of me and he's thinking of us being at home. He went out of his way. Another thing too is we have inherently difficult jobs. What we do, we go out and we see sometimes the worst of humanity, and then we come home and we are supposed to be regular people. But the dynamic between the two of us is we can see and understand each other's jobs because we know that what it entails. I mean, I don't understand necessarily the fire aspect of it because I'm not a firefighter, but when it comes to like paramedicine part of it, because we're both paramedics, um, that has made it easier. And I think than other relationships for people who maybe don't understand what it is to have a really difficult shift, come home and just need space. And not that it's, cold and directed towards that person because you're gone for 12, 24, 48 hours. And all you want to do when you're at home is see that person when they come home and just be excited to be there. But they just had really horrific things that they're going to carry with them for the rest of their life. And yes, they miss you, but they have to really figure out how they're going to not compartmentalize, but just deal with those feelings and acclimate back into their regular life. And so if he has a bad shift, we talk and it just be like, I had this or something was going on. It's just like, okay, like he comes home and just like, I got to give him that space. I got him that quiet. What do you need? And I don't try to take it personally. There are times where I get sad, but I don't take it personally. And the same thing happens when I come home from a bad shift. I'll just give him a quick heads up. Like I had this call or whatever. Like I just need to come home and I will acknowledge you guys, but I need to just go in that other room and I need to take a shower and I just need to be quiet and have some space for a little bit before I can jump back into mom wife mode. And so that I feel like is a blessing that we both have that, but it can also totally be a curse too because we do have that. And when we bounce things off of each other, sometimes it's that vicarious empathy where I feel that pain for my husband because I understand. I know what that looks like. Whereas, if you're telling your family who doesn't do what we do, they don't really grasp the, gravity of what it is. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it totally makes sense. I actually, I was a dental assistant for 20 years of our marriage, and that's very different, but it's kind of the same because
Yeah.
you have people coming into the dental office that are very stressed.
Hmm.
They're afraid of the dentist. So you have this mental load that happens where you have to be compassionate for them and you have to help them manage that stress in that moment. And then on top of that, you have to do your job.
Hmm.
And so it's not as traumatic, but the stress level may be equal, like at some points. There were times I had to hold kids down to keep them from hitting the dentist so that
Yeah.
he could finish a cavity.
Yeah.
It had its own set of things. And so I totally understood the idea that I need to come home and shut it off,
Hmm.
put it up on that shelf in the closet
Yeah.
before I can interact with my family. And so I think that actually put us at a really great advantage at
Hmm.
some point in our marriage. It was more for us where he wouldn't tell me.
He doesn't want to put that through though too, like because of the terrible things that we see, we don't want to give that to somebody else who's not going to understand it the way, like we don't want to do that to somebody because
Yeah.
sometimes it's really hard.
I think that a lot of times they think that we can't handle things,
Mhm.
and that's where those conversations need to happen. Like,
Yeah.
this is the amount of stuff that I can handle. Like, whoa, that's too much information for me. But how do we ever know if we never talk about it?
Well, also it's having an advantage. There's terrible statistics when it comes to, first responders, whether they're fire, law, paramedicine, whatever, where, we have high alcoholism, we have high divorce rates, we have high suicide rates. And for us, we both have been doing it for a long time. 2020 is like defining point in both of our lives because for him, I started to be able to pick up and see those things and changes in him that were concerning, the quiet, the isolation, anger, and all those things, to where I was able to stop and recognize it. You can say, hey, I think something is going on. Like, do we need to do something? And it turned out we took a break for his PTSD and like he did some really intensive work for 8 months to deal with it. But I think back because I've lost a, a lot of friends to their demons, and I think back to, well, what if I hadn't understood where he was coming from and saw those signs and said something to get him to the place to get that help and then get the tools to be able to fix and work on his mental health. But in doing that, then we realized about 2 years after that, that I also was having a lot of issues with my mental health and my PTSD. I did not realize how isolating I had started to become and how I was taking on everything, but I also wasn't dealing with stuff in a healthy way. And we've done talk therapy and all of these things. And there's different modalities that work for different people. I had this opportunity to go to Academy Retreat for EMS women, and it's a nonprofit. It was their first one that they'd ever done, and I got to go to it. And when the opportunity presented itself, it would require me going away for a week. And I've never been the one to leave for a week where he has to figure out his schedule. He has to stop what he's doing. And when I talked to him about, hey, I have this opportunity, he's like, I will drop whatever I need to do in order to get you to go to this place. And for me, his want to be able to have this experience to work on myself and dropping whatever he had to do so that I could be successful. And that was the first time that that had really happened in our relationship, that he was able to do that was incredible. And then I went and I got all these tools and it was one of the greatest things I've ever done. But since that time, we are better partners now because we both have done that work to get the tools to make sure that we're continuing to stay healthy. But just that little bit of sacrifice that he made for that 1 week for me to go do it was incredible for me because for the last 7 years, I've been doing all the sacrificing of stuff.
It's so funny that you say that because it was like 2020 was a turning point for us too.
Yeah.
And I think it really was that lightning fire, hands down. Like, he's calling me, telling me they're going to evacuate the ECC. And I'm like, you're going to do what?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
No,
wait.
my house is down the street from that. And that whole lightning fire, I mean, at the time, our little boy wasn't even 2 years old. And I had to pack up everything, look at my house and be like, oh my gosh. And the terrible part about doing what it is that we do too, I knew what it looked like. I knew what the weather forecast was. And my husband, when he had gone into work, he called me and said, I'm looking at the reports. I'm hearing the weather. This is not going to be good. He's like, I want you to pack up. I want you to leave before they actually give the official evacuation notice. He's like, it's coming, but I need you to get out of there now because I don't want you to be stuck. We were expecting our house to burn down, and then just one weather shift in a 6 hour period made everything different. So you just have these huge highs and these huge lows, and it was stressful.
Yeah, it was stressful. And you were in the middle of a pandemic.
Oh, I
Everybody was isolated from everybody. We were all wearing masks. We were all doing all these
Oh,
things.
I mean,
Like,
I'm dealing with COVID. In May of that year, our little boy had choked on a piece of string cheese and I wasn't able to clear it. And I had to call 911. And it was the first time I've ever had to call 911. And as a first responder, not being able to do your job is a terrifying thing when it's on someone, and like it was awful. And so, like, I'm having this issue with like our little boy, and then the fire happens in August, and then we come back home and we had been evacuated for something like 12 or 13 days. We're moving our stuff that I had taken back into our house, and we had this big L cabinet thing that we had just like grabbed. I'm not even going through it, but it was heavy. And normally it's secured against our wall, and we had our baby gates up, and we're moving stuff back in. And I looked at my husband and I was like, "Where's Connor?" And all of a sudden you just heard this loud crash, and then this cry and the scream. And you as a mom know that your child is hurt with these types of screams. And so we go and we find it, and he pulled it down on them. This little boy broke his leg. So we just moved back into the house. And now instead of being able to put things back together, I'm going over to the hospital and I have a little boy who's going to be 2 in 3 days with a broken leg now. So it just was
Ugh.
2020 was a terrible year. I
Oh,
didn't
but we
wanna
have those, right? Like,
oh,
it feels like when you're in it, it's everything all at once, right? Doesn't we just went through a year like that ourselves just recently, and so I totally sympathize with that. When it rains, it pours.
yeah.
Oh, man, that must have been so scary, though, in that time.
Yeah, it was, I mean, when we evacuated, luckily, my brother-in-law, my sister-in-law live in, San Mateo, so we didn't have to go super far, but we went, and so Luke had gotten called back into work. His department already had strike teams that were out at other parts of the state because the entire state was on fire. Nobody understood. There was just the perfect storm of terrible circumstances. Resources were stretched thin across the state. We have never seen anything like that. And because he was being maxed out and he would get like 2 days off, but because we live where we do and in our location of where we live, those are all volunteer fire departments. We had strike teams that were coming in from everywhere else to help deal with it. But as volunteer fire departments, we've got CAL FIRE, and we've got these strike teams. But he was coming in on his days off, then coming back into our valley with all of his wildland gear. And they were allowing off duty firefighters to come in and help, cut line and try to do stuff because it was so short staffed. So he was doing that on any of the days that he had off. So
Ugh. I know, I kinda know how it feels, though, like, think yeah, there's nothing you can do about it. You're in it. You're the default parent. You're doing all the things. Tell me, how do you guys handle like the schedule and managing your son's resources and all of that in school?
So, our little boy, he had been at a Montessori school, and they had noticed some sensory stuff pretty early, and I'm pretty thankful for that because we got a really early diagnosis. So we started interventions very, very soon. We did speech therapy and we did some ABA therapy. I would look at our schedule because we have a shared family calendar, and when it comes to scheduling stuff, I try to do it on days where he's home so that we can split the load. But more or less, it generally does fall onto me. Up until about a year ago, the school had me down for primary for everything, even though he's also listed. And I was the one getting the emails. I was always getting the first phone calls. And it got to a point where I was like, I would like you to actually put him down. And I would actually like you to put him down first because I don't want to always be the default person that you contact automatically thinking that it's me. Because there have been times where they've called me and I'm like, I'm on duty. Why didn't you call his dad? Like you can call him too. But because he's in first grade, last year was kindergarten. And last summer, he was gone when we had the start of kindergarten. So he missed the start of kindergarten. And we had already been in TK at our public school system. So we knew that we were going to have to do some interventions. And so I requested a meeting. And of course, he's on a strike team. So it was his off day on the strike team. So I've got him on FaceTime like this, trying to talk to this big group of people. And it's really an intimidating thing because you have to become an expert, not only in your child's diagnosis, you have to become an expert in anything that's going to be an intervention that you need to get into. You need to understand law. You need to understand the resources available. You need to understand your rights as a parent. And a lot of that does fall back on me. But I'm also that type A personality that I'll read the manual for everything. I keep my manuals and warranties for everything. He jokes that I read my car manual. I just want to know and be informed. I should add, my husband has ADHD. So we are two actually very different personalities when it comes to these things, which is we balance each other out because he's always just like, well, let's just do it as it comes. And I'm like, no, I want to have a plan for this. And this is a situation where we have to have a plan. And it got hard with the school just because it started to become overwhelming. And I started to feel like I was drowning and I didn't understand if I was doing the right thing or if I was doing enough. And I had to have a conversation with him. I said, I need help to figure this out. If you can take some of this, they always talk about the mental load that the women hold. Prime example is, oh, there's always toilet paper on the roll. And it's just like, yeah, that's because I make sure that if it's getting low, I think, hey, I've got to go to the grocery store and go buy that and make sure that we have enough so that there's never not toilet paper on that roll. But you never think about all those things that I do to get that there. So it's kind of the same thing with the school stuff. I need you to be a bigger part. So it is difficult with his schedule, and he tries to participate as much as he is. But even before I got on with you, I just looked and I got an email about his IEP for his speech therapy at school. And I looked and they didn't CC him on it. It was just to me. So it's continuing to be a battle. It is difficult and there's no easy way to do it. And it just feels like it falls onto me most of the time because I have
Well,
all
that's
the
exactly
connection.
it.
Yeah.
I've had similar experiences where they don't CC the husband when they're like, you've asked multiple times. My kids are 15, 17, and 21, and they all have IEPs.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have one with autism, one with ADHD, and one with dyslexia.
Okay.
So now I have three things I have to be an expert in. So when my youngest got his dyslexia diagnosis, I said, I can't be the expert on autism and ADHD and dyslexia, and my husband's dyslexic. So I'm like, you're going to have to be the expert on that because you are having the same experience as James. And so we're going to go ahead and let you handle all of it.
Yeah.
So for our kids on our contact forms, he's the primary for James.
Yeah.
So now they like divide and conquer. They call if it's anything to do with James, they email him and I
Mhm.
get CC'd. But if it's anything to do with the other, I get the emails, right?
Yeah.
So when I decided that was gonna be a thing, it
Mhm.
took this huge load off
Mhm.
of me because now we've divided and conquered. I don't have the responsibility of both kids.
Yeah.
That being said, trying to schedule an IEP meeting is horrendous. I don't think the schools understand that even though they can do things over Zoom,
Mhm.
that that's not gonna work for our spouses who are out in the field.
Yeah.
They're like, "Oh, well, why can't he just take a phone call?" Well, either he doesn't have any cell service, or he's gonna get interrupted by a call, or there's all this going on around him. There's no easy way to do that.
Yeah, people they'll see me trying to get lunch or coffee when I'm on duty, I'm in my uniform. They're like, "Oh, you on a lunch break?" I'm like, "No, at any given time, I could literally pay for my coffee and leave it here." I have probably left tens of thousands of dollars worth of food and coffee around this area because of times I've had to leave. So it's just like, yeah, things don't pause. But it's really funny that you say that you split up with your husband taking the dyslexia because, you had the ADHD diagnosis. Luke started to read a whole bunch of stuff to try to understand where we were going to go on that. And it was really funny because he got a late diagnosis for ADHD because he was reading about Connor. And I remember it clear as day, he stopped reading. He looked at me very seriously and he goes, I think I have ADHD. They both kind of got this diagnosis around the same time. And then Luke started medication. And we had been doing ABA therapy and a bunch of other stuff for Connor. And it was still continuing to be a problem. The poor little boy could not concentrate to save his life. And then Luke started the medication and he was just like, it's crazy. He's like, I wonder what I would have done had I started meds or had this ability when I was younger and not just ruled out as a wild child or not having that stigma. Cause I was really resistant to wanting to put him on meds because I was like, we'll just accept him who he is. He's my spicy little neurodivergent child. Like, I'm like, this is him and who he is. And I don't want to change who he is. And then when Luke was talking about the successes that he was starting to have and how he looked back on his childhood and just how he was at work now being medicated and how it helped him, when we finally started meds, it was a game changer for him. This little boy is able to focus and he feels so proud of himself, and no one's telling him, no, stop that, or telling him that he's got to go to the principal's office. So having his perspective on that helped us do, I think, for us the right thing because it's not for everybody. And I don't think that every child needs to have that, but it does help. And for us, because Luke had that experience too, we were able to be successful. So having them both on medicine, you don't realize how hard life is until it's not anymore. But my house is the quietest it's ever been.
All right. So, wow, I think we covered it. Is there anything else you want to share?
You don't know what you sign up for. I don't think
You don't.
anybody understands. But I also think that the nature of the fire service is changing. I mean, I've seen it. And I think that again, we go back to 2020, COVID changed a lot. You have a lot of different approaches now to the people who are coming in, those next generation that are coming into the fire service. We see it on the EMS side of it. People are a lot more in tune with their mental health. Their jobs that we do are really hard. And, we have a lot more openings and we're having people who will, go through a fire academy and be like, you know what, this isn't for me and like, peace out. That was not common 10, 15 years ago. It was like they were, fighting and lining up the door to get into the fire service, but people are dropping out now. And so we're not having this attrition that's coming in and we're having more openings, which is creating more mandos and we're having more of a pull on the people who are still doing it, which in turn affects the families, which if you don't understand what they're getting into, it's gonna be hard. Um, it's a fulfilling life. I'm not the typical fire wife. I mean, we have friends, but like I'm not that fire wife that's not married to a fireman. If anything, I'm like, oh my God, I'm married to a fireman. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh my god, like, what did I do?
But
No.
it's such
No, I hear you on that. I'm not a cheerleader. I'm not gonna cheer for things that are not cheerable. I'm just not. And I love my husband and I love what he does, and I have a lot of respect for it,
Mhm.
but I'm not gonna sugarcoat the parts that are hard.
Anytime he calls me at 9 o'clock at night and he's on duty, it's never good news. And it happened this last week. He had an overtime shift. He was captive audience. He got forced in. He had his 2 days that he had to work. He had an overtime. He got captive audience again. I had to call out for shifts because he was forced this last week. And whenever he calls and he's like, I'm sorry, all these things, I started to make it a point of I will never say it's okay because
Mm-mm.
it's not. I understand it's not your fault, and I'm not mad at you. I'm frustrated, and it can sound like I'm upset. I cry, but I'm not mad at you. But I have stopped saying I do it on purpose. I don't say it's okay because it's not okay. You know, it's your job, and I understand that, and I respect you for doing it, and I am so happy that you have that heart and that drive to want to do this. But it's not okay. But it is something that I accept. Does that make sense? Like,
Yeah, no, totally. I totally agree. Like, it's not okay that I have to change my entire schedule so that you can do your job,
yeah,
but I accept it.
yeah.
And I've actually started just being like, okay,
It is
like
what it is.
not in a it's okay, but like just all right, I'll see you when I see you,
Yeah.
And I think that's like the only way to really get through it.
Mhm.
And then I get off the phone and I get mad and all the things.
I
You know?
I try not to cry with him on the phone, and like I said, I cry when I get mad. I try not to
Yeah.
cry because I don't wanna make him feel bad about it, but, he if he can just acknowledge that it's hard for me,
Yeah.
and then acknowledge the work that I do, and acknowledge the sacrifices that I make and I'm gonna continue to make for our family so that he can do what he wants to do and his job that he loves, that's enough for me. And I think
Yep.
that anybody who is married to a firefighter, regardless if you're another first responder or not, you have to really have that tough mental grit of, are you going to be able to do that and understand that that's part of what they do? They have no control over it, but that's just part of it. So
And also lucky for you, you have these kinds of things where we're having these conversations because let me tell you, 17 years ago, that was not a thing.
totally. I mean, this was just like when you were like talking, I was like, yeah, I would love to talk to someone who understands what it is like because
Yeah.
like I said, I don't have other girlfriends that are married to firefighters and understand. And I don't want pity from people when they're just like, oh, where
Mm-mm.
is he at now? Oh, it must be so hard. I don't want the pity.
Mm-mm.
But I would love
Yeah.
to be able to just have that acknowledgement like, hey, do you want some help?
Hey, do you want some help? Hey, this really sucks. We're in it.
Little stuff like that is what is
Mhm.
nice to have when people are just like, not the pity, like, oh, your husband's gone. It's just like, no, we can we help be your village? And I think that that's an important thing to find that village.
Yep, I actually, had somebody tell me that my village is whatever I make it,
Mhm.
and they're like, "My village is the Uber driver that brings me food.
Yeah,
The village is the paper plates that I have instead of having to do dishes." Like, the little things that we build our village with, and then it's also community and people,
mhm,
and it's who we choose to be around, and I feel like you're right, there's a lot it would be really nice to live somewhere where there was somebody that got it.
yeah,
But there are also online communities that you can join, and I
totally,
would very much encourage everyone listening to this to find one. Like, it doesn't have to be one certain one, but find the one that works for you.
yeah.
There's a lot of them.
My only community right now is my online Reddit 49er community because I'm a huge 49er fan.
Oh, we love the 49ers. Oh
Oh,
my gosh.
Yeah, but yeah, it's so funny. My husband is not as big of a 49er football fan as I am, and this last week, there's been a lot of movement with things, and he's just
My husband loves the 49ers and he loves to watch football,
yeah.
but he's not into, like, watching everything that's going on, and I'm like, "But we just lost Kittle." Like, "What?"
They got rid of Moody, thank God. But I told my husband the other day because, he got forced work, I had to call out, and then he came home for 2 days, and those 2 days, I was on duty. So, after being gone for 6 days, he's got 2 days off, and then I'm going on duty for 12 hours, but I'm getting held over because, life happens and I can't schedule 911 calls. He was on duty, I think it was his last day, so whatever day that was, Tuesday. You don't know what day of the week it is when they've been gone. The rivalries jerseys dropped, and I just sent him a message, and I'm like, "I'm buying a jersey. This is what's gonna happen to make me happy right now." He's like, "Great."
So it sounds like a pretty normal first responder relationship, except for a little bit more complicated. But we're all doing it. That's the whole point. We're making it. We're making it work. We've suffered through fire seasons and all the things. And of course, hindsight is always 2020. But
Yeah.
I'm really excited for this new generation coming in because I feel like it's going to be a lot healthier.
Oh, I mean, 100%. I already see it. I mean, when I got into it, and my husband, because he started out as a explorer and volunteer, so I mean, this has been our whole lives. It was always, oh, you see something bad, just shove that down and lock it away in the closet. That's how it used to be. Now it's just like even a call that might bother somebody. You got peers calling and checking in on them. They have the ability to debrief. The peer support services, EAP, they have their company officers checking in on them, being like, "Hey, are you okay after this?" That is huge. And I'm just so thankful for that because if we're going to have any good providers that continue to do these jobs, not only are they going to be healthy for themselves and their families, but they're going to be better providers because of that. They're not going to be resentful to be at the job. They're going to still have the joy that got them into that profession in the first place. And that is what makes me happy about this next
Yeah.
generation coming up.
And there's so many resources out there now too
Mhm.
in general for first responder families that I think that it's a matter of just finding it.
Yep. Yep.
I don't have to go searching. I don't even have to call a hotline number in order to
Yeah.
get what I need.
Fires up. They've got Instagram ads that are going out and yeah, no, I mean it's far more available. So that's exciting for everyone who's starting to come up, and for us to even start to get in on it too. It's never too late to enjoy the changes that are happening now.
I'm happier now than I've ever been, and our
Yeah.
marriage is fantastic. And I mean, it is what it is, right? The other stuff is the other stuff,
Yeah.
and that's fine.
Yeah.
But even within our horrific year, like we are still happy to be married. We're still happy to be here, and we're still having the joy that comes from being a family and really the job too. Like I've made so many friends in the past like 4 months.
Mhm.
Like I didn't know that you worked in the same place that my husband does. I had no idea. And just being able to have conversations like these is so valuable.
Yeah.
So, thank you so much for
You're
joining me
welcome.
and talking about this today. It's
No,
been
thank you.
fantastic.
That's great.